Welcome to the Leadership Journal with your hosts, Nick Helgett and Robbie Woodard,
where we cover our journey, struggles, and obstacles that we have overcome, and moments in our careers that have led to growth. Here on Table Talk each week, where we break down various topics and journals of our trials and tribulations.
Welcome back to the Leadership Journal with your host, Nick Helgett, Robbie Woodard, and Jed Stoltz. We're here to continue our conversation about motivation. Motivation in the workplace, motivation as a leader. I'll let someone else take it away.
So last episode, we unpacked a lot when it comes to the different theories behind motivation, the different aspects behind it. Hertzberg's two-factor theory, SDT. I'm not going to touch on Maslow's because I'm not a psychologist. I don't have a lot of experience in his hierarchy of controls. So when we're looking at everything that we were covering last episode, where we're going to next is a segment that breaks down motivation versus discipline. Now we did talk about how there was a video that Jocko had out where he pretty much used the word good a lot, and like, I didn't get the job, I didn't get that supply, I didn't get that opportunity. Good, you can learn something new. Having that discipline to keep going.
The discipline and motivation to keep going.
The factors that'll allow you to continue to succeed and do more. When I think about that, like, what is the difference between discipline and motivation that you guys think of when we hear the two words?
Motivation for me is, what do I need to accomplish today? Discipline is the drive to get out of bed and do it.
So having routines, having checklists to do, some things to get done, and then that drive in the motivation side to accomplish everything.
Yeah.
That's interesting because, to be honest, I heard that question a little bit differently. I heard that question, and maybe this says more about me than anything else, but I heard that question more along the lines of what's the difference between motivation, like wanting to do something yourself, or discipline, being forced to do something so you don't get in trouble. So It's interesting that you heard it that way, because I heard it differently. That said, I do want to touch on what you said. I think using discipline as the way you used it, right? I think that the difference between motivation and discipline is motivation is I want to do this for whatever reason. It's good for me. It's good for my team. It's good, whatever, right? I have my own reasons why I want to do this for myself or for somebody else, whatever. I think I would say motivation is more internal in that way, whereas discipline is I have to do this to meet an obligation, right? Whatever that obligation is. Maybe if you're talking about going to the gym, right? I need to go to the gym every day so I can be healthy. My obligation is I go to the gym every day. So discipline is I don't want to go. I would rather sleep in for a couple extra hours, but I need to go to the gym today. So I'm going to get up, I'm going to go to the gym, and then I'm going to go shower and go to work, get dressed and go to work, right? So I think, like the way you were talking about it, Nick, I think that is kind of, for me, the difference between motivation and discipline. Motivation is, this is great, I want to do this, right? And discipline is, I really don't want to do this. I would rather do a lot of other things, but I need to do this, so I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah, that's a good explanation.
Well, like when I look at it, I see both of your perspectives and how it gets framed in different ways. But I'm going to put something out there that not a lot of people know or are aware of, but I'm autistic, and I'm on the higher functioning side of everything, where I have to have routines every day. It's something that literally drives everything that I do. But if I add things into my routine, I'm building that discipline to go to the gym, go for a run, go work on a project, get some editing done, get something put out, get some, like, my homework tasks accomplished. I'm putting forth my discipline to make sure my routine is as effective as possible to get stuff accomplished. And my motivation is that my goal is to ultimately have what I want in the future. I'm looking at the next thing. I'm looking at, why am I doing this, and why is it having to be baked into my routine so heavily so that I can achieve my goals? So like with what you guys both have said about having a checklist, but then the desire to go do it, just my perspective is like, why am I doing it? What drives me? What pushes me forward? But I love your perspective immediately going to the disciplined, I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to face ramifications. I'm going to have certain things happen if I don't do this. A lot of people hear the word discipline, they think negative too. Like we hear the word accountability, we think negatively, or responsibility negatively. Why?
Well, and I think by discipline, I guess I should say more. We talked about in the last episode, controlled motivation, that external force saying you need to get this done by this deadline. And I suppose that's probably what I meant more along the lines of discipline is that pressure that I have to get this done for somebody else, or this is going to be the consequences of me not doing it.
And I like that because it's the consequences that come with forgetting to go to the gym one day or not having that routine or like skipping something. What can it do to potentially dwindle your motivation if you're just not doing anything anymore? You're not having the accomplishment of those tasks.
Yeah, I have a thought that just kind of occurred to me a second ago. That motivation versus discipline. Again, thinking of discipline as I don't necessarily want to do this, but I need to for whatever reason, right? Maybe it's good for me, maybe I'll get in trouble, whatever. But like this is something I have to do, so I'm going to do it. I would argue that discipline is where motivation starts.
Ooh, okay.
And for a lot of people in a lot of ways, right? And I think you had a great example of going to the gym. And it's January right now at the time that we're recording this. And so lots of people in the last few weeks have been making New Year's resolutions. And one of the most common ones every year is always, I need to go to the gym or I need to work out more, right? And at first, for the first couple weeks, you might have all that motivation. I just made this decision. I'm going to do it. I'm all the way up here. I'm hot. I'm going to go to the gym, right? I'm motivated. Excuse me. And then after a little while, that motivation, that novelty starts to taper off. And that's where discipline takes over. And discipline is when you say, yeah, I don't feel it anymore. I don't have the excitement of my New Year's resolution, but I made a commitment to myself, to somebody else, whatever. So I'm going to keep going through with this thing the way that I said I was going to do it. And I think if you do that long enough, like you said, it becomes part of your routine. And once it's part of your routine, you become motivated again to continue that, right? Then you get to the point where you say, like, I don't feel like doing this, but you know what I really don't feel like? Not doing it. I've gone to the gym once a week, every week for 3 years. And you know what I hate the idea of more than going to the gym? Breaking my streak. And I think that's where discipline turns back into motivation. I like what I'm doing. This is who I am. I feel good. I want to keep doing it more than I want to stay home and be lazy and eat some chips.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's that habit formation. It takes a very long time to build the habit. You have to be consistent and routine with everything you're doing. And then it gets to a point where it's just second nature. And a lot of people are going to feel that drawback to, I didn't go do that today. I need to go do that. And if you get out of the routine of not doing it, you built the other habit of not going back. So it takes more effort to go back into it because you start fighting the urges of, why did I do this in the first place? Why did I not want to go back? What are my issues? Like, why do I not want to do this? So it just starts building doubt in yourself. So you have to maintain those habits to stay motivated to constantly do something so that it's baked into your nature.
Yeah, but to loop all this back into leadership, you as a leader are required to influence motivation in your team, create an environment where motivation thrives. And I can think of numerous times where I've come up with an idea or there's an initiative at work that I'm excited about and I want to see this change. And I'm genuinely excited about it. And it comes back to my first day to go back to work for the week. And I present this topic to my team that I'm super excited about. And they proceed to tell me why that's a stupid idea. How do you maintain the drive to continue to push that influence amongst all the negativity? Because for me, I can think of so many times where that's been a stopping point for me. So how do you push through that and continue to push that message?
So this is going to vary by leader. And it's going to vary based on each scenario because everyone's going to be different. But when you think back to when you have all these questions, I think the ultimate thing is when they start picking apart the change, they start looking at resistance. Resistance is the hardest part of change. And when you look at change management, the influencing and inspiring people to look at something differently, you then have to take all the concerns that are given to you and to think of how can you reframe what you've already said with their concerns in mind, but then pointing out the benefits that'll come from taking a foot in a different direction and looking at it in a different way and kind of like maintaining that urgency.
But when you have a low self-esteem or maybe not a grasp on the entire process, and you're talking to a room of subject matter experts, how do you push through that? Because now you don't have a rebuttal to why this is a good idea because you don't have the process information to back what you're saying.
I'm glad you asked that question because, Robbie, I think you're half right.
Okay.
If I may.
Yeah.
I think that you do have to get that feedback that you were talking about, right? You do have to ask. You do have to get that information from your team. And Nick, to your point, right? If you're in a room full of subject matter experts, and your responsibility is to change a process or push a new idea, and they all tell you that's not going to work, right? I think the first thing that you need to do, and this is a little off topic as far as motivation, but I think the first thing they need to do is have the humility to understand that you don't have all the answers, right? You said it, right? These people are subject matter experts. They know more than me. They're asking me questions I don't have answers to. I think it's important to remember that I'm not better at this than these people. I don't know more about this than they do. So I need to ask why, right? They say it doesn't work. I need to say, why won't it work? And when they ask you questions you don't have the answers to, you say, that's a great question. I don't have the answer. I need to find out more.
And you have to not let it derail your motivation to continue to push that change.
Exactly. It's not about, at this point, right? It's not about you and your abilities. It's about understanding what they're telling you, making sure that you understand the big picture and getting the answers they need so you can make this process work, right? And checking your ego to say that will make you try to say, oh, I'm the boss, you just need to shut up and do what I say, right? It's a normal thing for people to kind of have that defensive mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Well, because I'm your boss, that's why. And checking that and saying, you know what, I didn't think about that, and that's okay. I don't have to have every answer every time. I'm a human being. But what I am going to do is I'm going to take action based on what you just told me to make sure that what we're doing is absolutely the right thing. I will find the answers to your questions.
Because I've been the tenured team member that sees the holes in the initiative, right? But I've also been the team member that looked at my peers and said, we don't know unless we try. If we don't give the data to say that this will work positively or negatively, and to be able to tweak those things to make it work in the environment that we are in, you'll never truly know, and you'll be stuck as an hourly team member. You'll be stuck in that, well, this is the way we've always done it type of mentality. So you have to be presenting to people for it to go off flawlessly. You have to be discussing with a group of people that are open-minded, and that's just not reality.
I also think that in some ways this discussion ties in a little bit with what we talked about in the first part of the episode, with Hertzberg's 2 factors, right? One of the motivators is challenging work. And I think that, when you think you've got it all figured out and somebody pushes back and says, well, have you thought about that? It can be super disheartening when you thought you had it all together and you thought you were there. Or you can look at it as, I'm going to learn something I thought I already knew. And maybe you did. Maybe you did, and they just caught you off guard, and you actually had the answer, but you weren't prepared with it in that moment. Maybe you're going to learn something completely different. But being open to that kind of growth and that challenge, I think also as a self-motivation tool, right? Like, you know what? I don't have the answer to this, but now I'm motivated to find the answer because that person just challenged me with something I didn't even know I needed to be challenged with.
Well, and to add on to that, like when we're putting this idea out there, if the common answer becomes, well, this is how we've always done it, how we've always done it, then the resistance to change becomes, okay, why do we not want to change? And what is so dead set on having to do it this specific way? Why can't we do it differently? And then that's a different conversation. That's a harder conversation because now you're talking to the wall, but then
you have to. That's when you have to change your tactics.
Yeah.
Right. You have to come at it with we have these set goals we need to reach. This is a new process to try and get those results that we're looking for. We're looking for your feedback to improve this process. Just because we're rolling this out this way doesn't mean it's set in stone. We need you to help us refine this process. So you're flipping the narrative.
And giving it an honest effort and not just saying, oh, we did it. But did you? Did you actually give it a shot?
And then once you get that process rolling, recognizing the people that are giving that effort to try to make it work and to give you that honest feedback to improve the process.
I also think it's important, and I also realize that this is off topic, but I think it's important as well to remember that sometimes the answer to, well, why can't we do it the way we've always done it, may be that the metrics that we measured by don't matter anymore. That's why. Is the way that we used to do it still valid if those were the things we cared about? Absolutely. But we've shifted our attention to a different type of metric, which will be better served by doing it a different way. Are we sacrificing those things we used to care about? 100%. Absolutely. But we're doing it because we're trying to focus on this instead, and we feel like those are adding more value to our business. I mean, Nick, you and I went through this at one of our previous employers, where they changed the way that freight was picked from a way that was friendly to the team member and helpful for making production numbers to a new system that encouraged faster production, faster product movement, right? From, well, we'll let it sit a day so that there's more to pick and the efficiency is at the warehouse, to let's get it out to the stores as quickly as possible at whatever cost, even at the cost of production to the individual team members. And that was a hard pill to swallow because we had spent so long being told this is the way we do it and these are the reasons why. And that was still a perfectly valid way to do it. The company decided that those metrics weren't as important to them. The density of the pick was less important to them than getting it to the store immediately. And so they changed their focus, and that caused them to change the way that we picked freight, and that rocked our world trying to understand why we're making this change because we were stuck in the old way
of
thinking. But the
pitfall of that was they didn't continue to explain the why.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not saying that was a perfect transition, but in hindsight, right, as a leader now, I recognize that what was happening was we changed what we cared about. And because we changed what we cared about, we changed the way that we measured what we did. As an hourly employee at the time, I didn't understand that I was not connected with that vision, that why, in a way that helped me understand. But my point is, I guess, all the more that it's a perfectly valid reason for making a change from what we used to do, to say, because what we used to do is not our focus anymore. And here's why it's not our focus.
Well, I think this goes, we can take this a step further and look at Tough and say, we want to build a culture that is focused on always looking to improve and always looking to understand new metrics, new processes, how to be more effective at what we do, because maybe it is not as effective in the long run as we thought it is, so we need to get some adjustments there. But when we're the frontline leader and we're going to get bombarded day after day after day after day when new initiatives roll out of try this, try this, try this, try this, but no one is supporting you. No one's behind you or with you saying, here's why. They just give you blanket information and say, go with it. But it's at that point, how do we filter everything in? How do we filter everything in? How do we look at stuff differently? Like one of the things that I would do is if I got new information that was going to drastically change the way that my team was going to work, I'd put it on a pause, and then I would ask my boss, or I would let my boss know, hey, I'm waiting a day. I need to get some more clarification, some more answers as to why this change is occurring from my support teams, from my CI, my ICQA, my other operations teams, to know what is so important as to why we're doing this, so that when I go tell my team, 40, 115, 15 people, however big the team is, this is why we're doing it, so that I'm not just giving another quote-unquote corporate answer as to how we're changing, but why we're changing. And I think that's I
think you touched on something as well that kind of resonated with me a little bit. Support is so important. I know in my position as a leader, if I don't feel supported, I start to lose my motivation to continue to try to push for that continuous improvement, for that change, for leading my team to be an energetic, influential leader.
Because when it feels
supported,
like you're standing on the edge of a cliff screaming into the void.
Yes. And recently I started getting that support, and that was so revitalizing to the way I lead. And and I'm changing the way I lead as a result, because I'm getting guidance. I'm seeing a different path, and I'm seeing I hesitate to say a better way, because we're both learning, but a different way of looking at things, so that I can continue to grow my tool belt, and continue to learn new ways to approach these tough situations. And it gave me motivation again to continue to try and learn. But when you're not supported, that drive, that motivation, that drive for continuous improvement, for continued learning, you start to lose it, because you don't know which way to go.
And I've worked with the leader that I'm pretty sure you're referencing. I've worked with that individual before, and one of the things that they used to say to me and to everybody else that was interesting and unique in my experience was, how can we think about this differently?
Yep, he says it all the time. And
all the time.
And it's super helpful in most situations.
Yeah. And I love that phrase because to me, it really drives home that you're not thinking about it wrong. Like what you may say, hey, this is what we do and this is why we do it. And then you get asked, well, how can we think about it differently? Not because what you're thinking about is wrong or doesn't work or won't deliver good results.
But you might have blinders on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But are we really looking at it from all angles? Is there a better way that we just haven't seen yet? So let's forget about better. Let's forget about all of that. And let's just think differently, and then follow that trail logically and see if maybe we can get better results that way.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's become, probably to the frustration of some of my employees, it has become something I've added to my vocabulary.
Yeah.
One of the things that I like a couple episodes ago,
I have also added that to my vocabulary. Sorry to cut you off.
No, just words are hard tonight, apparently. One of the things that I had talked about in one of our previous episodes was there was a team member that had said that they couldn't read me. They couldn't put a finger on how I felt because they couldn't tell. And I've been thinking about that for the last couple of weeks, about like why they thought that, why they looked at that. And the self-reflection got me to think that there's a lot of times I had to master pausing. I had to master thinking of stuff differently, because it's something that I had read into, something I had looked into, because I was really good at analyzing situations super fast, come up with a word and vomiting it out. And then without entirely understanding everything that I was saying, I would misconstrue something, miss something, communicate something wrong, So I added more time to my pauses. I would just take things in, analyze them a little bit differently, share them with peers, get the wording right, and then I would communicate everything out. So I wouldn't just share that. And so by doing that, I was putting up a wall between me and my emotional side so that my team couldn't see what was really going on if I felt insecure, if I felt unconfident, if I felt a lack of motivation to dissect it in that moment. And then like that's a good thing and a bad thing, because if someone can't read you, is it positive or is it negative? Because maybe they've had too many leaders where they know right away, oh, I know what they're thinking. But then they have a leader that overanalyzes stuff. Do they know how to approach you? Do they know how to talk to you? Are they going to want to talk to you more? So it's just finding that balance between being the calm, cool, and collected, thought-provoking leader versus the one that can give out answers super fast, but knowing that you don't know everything. Like we've said multiple times, you don't have to know everything. You just need to know who to talk to get the right thing out there. So I think it's just when we're looking at monitoring and managing or influencing motivation and cultures on our teams to want to do better, how do we always ask the questions? How do we invite in the curious thoughts and not shut them down? And then have someone help solve their own problems, their own questions, so that they're more encouraged to ask more in the future rather than just, oh, it got shot down. Because that one time you shoot them down, they're not going to come back to you. It'll take a little bit more to gain that trust back. So you want to have that open forum at all times. At least that's how I go at it and look at it. Don't know if that was off topic or if that was value added, but it's there.
It's all value added.
Maybe a little bit of both, but that's okay.
Like, because when we're looking at the motivation factor, the different ways to look at discipline, to look at motivation, to look at building cultures that want to do better, to look at how to continue ourselves maintaining that balance between feeling supported, feeling motivated, because leadership is an exhausting journey. Even the happiest leaders go home exhausted because people interaction takes a lot out of you. And when we look at like the different strategies, different techniques, different ways to like boost your own motivation, what is something that each of us does when we need a pick-me-up to help us continue going on and making it over that next hurdle and that next obstacle?
Well, and I think, that kind of brings us back to the beginning of the segment, right? Motivation versus discipline. To me, discipline, like I touched on a little bit earlier, right? Discipline often involves, I don't want to, but I need to. For whatever reason, I don't want to, but I need to. And I think that in those times when, as a leader, you don't emotionally have it in you to be the person you want to be, or the leader you want to be, right? You're not feeling it today, which I feel like it's a very glib way of saying it, but I think everyone understands what I'm talking about. I think that is where discipline has to take over. That's when you have to recognize I'm not in the headspace to emotionally be the person that I want to be, so I have to be intentional and disciplined about the things that I'm doing today in order to make sure I'm continuing to be the leader that I want to be. And I think oftentimes in my experience, by doing that, you will find those positive interactions that bring you back to where you can feel it again, right? You get the opportunity to have the conversations and the interactions with people that make you go, oh yeah, this is why I do this job.
Yep.
I mean, even to be honest, I'll be honest with you guys and all the listeners, just the last couple weeks, right? I've kind of gone up and down that roller coaster a couple times. I've had some good days. I've had some really, really hard, challenging days. And even just earlier today, I was at my workplace, and I don't know why. I was feeling pretty normal for the most part, but about halfway through the day, it hit me again. I was like, this is awesome. This is why I do this job every day, right? This is why I'm here. I'm really enjoying today. And it was still a challenging day. There was a lot going on, but it just hit me like, I feel good about today. I like this. This is why I do it. And that was great. But it wasn't that way last week. And last week I had to have the discipline to say, this is what I have to do because it's what's expected of me. It's what I expect of myself. It's what my team expects of me. It's what my company expects of me. These are the things I have to do. I have to meet these standards. And that, I mean, it's hard. I'm not saying it's easy. It's very hard. But I think that's where discipline and motivation can sometimes kind of feed into each other.
Yeah, you got to rely on discipline, because when you put everything you have into your career, into what you do every day at your job, you're not, at times you don't have a lot left when you get home. So it's finding ways to continue to do what you need to do to find that motivation again, and having that discipline. And sometimes that discipline might be, all right, my first day off, I'm going to have a me day. I'm going to rest. I'm going to recalibrate. I'm going to re-engage after I take a day of rest. And that's going to give me that headspace to be able to, work through these situations with a clear head. Sometimes you have to detach and not look at your work email. Sometimes it's I got to go hang out with a buddy and, with a safe person that I can vent to for a few minutes, because you just had this really tough day and you got to get it out. And this person's going to, be in the weeds with you. And then tomorrow you're going to be like, all right, that wasn't so bad. It wasn't as bad as I made it out to be. Let's do this. What's the next challenge?
Well, I think one of the hardest parts that a lot of leaders that I've talked to, even myself in experience, it feels at times like this is a thankful or a thankless position to be in. You feel like it's just you on an island, handling everything day to day, running the teams, and that no one sees or feels your trials and tribulations. But if you're in that spot, just think of the people that directly report to you, that are on your team, that work with you, that work for you, that do what you ask every day. There's a thing that they're thankful for from you that maybe they just haven't said to you in a while, that will remind you of, oh yeah, like you said, Jed, this is why I do this. This is what inspires me to continue coming back each and every day, because it is the hardest position to be in. The frontline leader with everything on your shoulders, not supported, you feel less motivated. You feel all support in the world, man, you can move mountains with that team. But it's about balancing both, and then just finding that point in, okay, I can keep doing this.
I can think of a time very recently that I was in that spot where I felt like, what am I doing here? And am I being effective in my position? Do these people, appreciate what I try to do every day? Am I the person that they dread when they walk through the door to see? And one of my team members said, if a group of aliens came to take over the world and they asked, take me to your leader, they said that they would be proud to take them to me and say that I'm their leader. And I was like, whoa, I am making an impact. And that gave me motivation to come back and try again. I know I'm making mistakes, and I know I got growth opportunities, and I know I got the areas that I need to work on. But that gave me motivation to keep pushing. Mm-hmm. Just that little bit of positivity. It was like, all right, I am making a difference.
Yeah, it feels so good when somebody from another shift comes to you and says, I was in an overtime the other day, and I really like what you guys are doing on your crew. Do you know if there are any openings? Because I would really like to be on your crew. Especially when that person is somebody who, like, I have also worked with. They come on my crew in overtime, and I have a lot of respect for what they do. I like this individual. I think they'd be a good part of our addition to our team. And they come to me and they say, I feel like I would fit in really well here, and I could really take it to that next level. I hope there's an opening on your crew soon, because I'd like to come join your team.
Powerful.
That's powerful. That makes everything else worth it.
Well, that right there says that there's motivation to join the group, to be part of the team, to, in the SDT theory, to belong, to have that that group that they now can help get even better, and they can inspire themselves to do more. So it's that there's a discipline and a motivation on your team that is drawing them. And if everyone can mirror that, perfect. You got everything that's going right there. I would say.
I'll take that.
Any final thoughts, gentlemen?
I think my final thought, somewhat, we've touched on a little bit, discipline and motivation. And, I think motivation is a wonderful thing. But I think, Nick, you said earlier, it can, in one of either, maybe it's been the last episode, it can be fleeting.
Yep.
It's something that you may not always have, but discipline is something that can be consistent, that is not emotional. It's a little more black and white, right? Yeah. It can be, at least. And I think it's important to recognize that they go hand in hand. On a good day, you might have all the motivation and you don't need the discipline because you want it. But it's also important to develop the discipline for the days when you just don't have the motivation, whether it's something at work or your personal life that's dragging you down. You got to have the discipline to back it up. You got to have both. It's a balancing act. You can't have one without the other.
Yep, you can't have one without the other, and it's just I paused for a minute there because it's really that I like to reference back to Jocko Willink, but he says discipline equals freedom, and that's really where it reigns true, because those some days are going to be hard, and you're going to lose that motivation, and you're not going to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but if you stick with and be disciplined and go through your routines and have that's why, at my place of employment, we talk a lot about leader standard work. And if you fall back on that disciplined leader standard work, that motivation will come back. You'll find that shining moment that rekindles that motivation and reminds you why you're there and reminds you why you need to keep pushing. But what's your closing thoughts?
Like for me, when I look at discipline and motivation, it goes back to, why are we doing this? Maybe you work for a bottling company. You're putting a soda, a beer, a wine, a seltzer into a bottle. Maybe you're making toilet paper. Maybe you're making lumber. Maybe you're making boxes. You're ultimately servicing corrugate, whatever, corrugate. I'm sorry. Maybe there's a purpose that your company is fulfilling, but what is your team doing to try to strive to be the best at this in the industry? Because everyone has that. Every company I've ever seen has we want to be the best in this, or the best in this, or the best in this. Like, that's your company.
Be the best manufacturer in the industry. It's
a trope.
Broad.
It's broad. But like, if you tell your team, I want my team to be the best at what we do, and you buy into it, and you're disciplined and you're motivated to get there, and they see it and they feel it and they believe it, that's the motivation and the discipline to achieve that goal, because your vision is there and they are on board 100%. And then they'll remind you that, hey, boss, this was our vision. Don't lose it, because I don't want to lose it. So let's keep going.
I think a really succinct way to summarize everything that we've talked about these last couple minutes is read Start With Why by Simon Sinek.
Yes.
I wish I could meet that guy.
Yeah, one day.
Such an amazing person.
Maybe we'll get him on our podcast someday.
Maybe.
He would be an amazing guest.
That would. There's some goals.
Yeah, some goals. So everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode about motivation and discipline, and whether or not it's a real deal. So everyone, thank you for tuning in. Jed, thank you for being here. Nick, thank you for being here. And everyone, catch us next week. Enjoy your week.
Thank you.
Thank you.